Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Ahmed Dents, Development and Artistic Associate here at San Diego Repertory Theatre, and I would like to welcome you to We Are Listening. For those of you, this is your first time being here, thank you and welcome. For those who have been here before, thank you for coming back. Oh, you don't want to see a still picture of me. This is supposed to be a video. You're supposed to be seeing me live. It's supposed to be live stuff here. Again, thank you for hanging out with us and joining us tonight. We have a very special episode for you tonight. Looking forward to this conversation. As we get ready to get things started, please let me remind you as you are coming into the room, please make sure that you have your camera off And also make sure that you have your microphone muted, and you only want to see, you want to make sure that you don't see non-video participants. Again, make sure you have your camera off and your microphone muted. If we do have comments or suggestions, whether you're watching on Zoom or whether you're watching on Facebook, please make sure you submit them via chat, and either Sharisa or AJ will let me know if there's questions in the chat, or if I see them myself, we'll make sure we get them addressed, or we'll mention them and talk to our guest about them. Again, thank you, and welcome back to We Are Listening. We continue to showcase and highlight Black theater creatives, administrators, workers in this industry, and just get their opinions on where the industry is going, highlight their careers and the things that they've seen along this path. And the more we all know about each other, the better we are throughout this whole industry. Before we get started on some things, I do want to give you a couple of programming notes. We Are Listening is produced by San Diego Repertory Theatre in partnership with La Jolla Playhouse and the Old Globe. And so I would like to share with you some programming notes some programming notes for all three theaters. I don't know why I'm so tongue-tied. I talk all the time. I talk too much sometimes. Let me go ahead and share with you what is going on. Tonight at 7 p.m., after We Are Listening, there is a special Passover edition of Women of Valor, part of the 27th annual Lipinski Family San Diego Jewish Arts Festival. You can watch that on YouTube. That is premiering at 7 p.m. Also, I want to talk to you about some programming notes that we have coming up here at San Diego Repertory Theatre. This Monday, April 5th, you can catch the final installment of the 2021 San Diego Rep Black Voices play reading series. We have had some spectacular plays and great conversations afterwards, and I know that will continue this Monday as we will be showing a reading of The Great Khan, written by Michael Gene Sullivan, directed by Delicia Turner Sonnenberg. And as I said, please make sure that you stay and kick it with us afterwards for the conversation. We discussed the themes in the play, what you took away from it. Head on over to sdrep.org to get your tickets if you do not have tickets already. And again, you'll be provided with the link to take part in the conversation afterwards. Also coming up, we have Higher and Higher Rock and Soul Party with Chester Gregory, an absolutely spectacular production. Chester is going over and performing all of the Motown greats. We begin streaming this on March 22nd. It'll be streaming through April 18th. So make sure you get your tickets for that. And I also want to talk to you about another streaming production that we have coming up, Hype Man. It is a breakbeat play written by Idris Goodwin, directed by Sean LeComte. This is an excellent play. I can't wait to check this out. When I read it, I was absolutely excited. So definitely make sure you get your tickets to check that out. And moving over to the La Jolla Playhouse side. Now, you guys know, usually my co-host, Jacole Kitchen, is here. She is actually directing. They are in production directing right now the Pop Tour. And we want to give a shout out to Jacole. She has recently just been named the new Director of Arts Engagement and In-House Casting at La Jolla Playhouse. She will be back with me in our next go around, but she is currently directing the Pop Tour. This is the performance outreach program. It'll be available at all schools. And this year, the Pop Tour the performance is Pick Me Last, again, written by Idris Goodwin, directed by Jacole. Make sure you head on over to La Jolla Playhouse and get the goods on that. Up next, I want to talk to you about, if I can get my screen straight here, at the Old Globe. Yeah, get out of there. At the Old Globe, coming up beginning April 23rd, Hamlet on the Radio. Yeah, I'm very excited to check this out. Directed by Old Globe artistic director Barry Edelstein. It's a revenge thriller, ghost story, psychological drama. I can't wait to check this out. It will air in two parts. First on Friday, April 23rd at 7 p.m. and then on Saturday, April 24th at 7 p.m. So make sure you head on over to theoldglobe.org and check that out. And then the last thing, make sure you join us next 2 weeks from now, April 15th, as our guest here on We Are Listening will be the one and only Jeremy McQueen. He has directed a spectacular, choreographed and directed a spectacular dance project, kind of chronicling the feelings of incarceration for youth. It is called Wild Act One. It is available for streaming at theIrisProject.org through April 4th. So that'll be Sunday. He will be our next guest on We Are Listening on April 15th. You can register for that now. Head on over to sdrep.org/listening to register. I'll throw the link up in the chat later, or you can register through, get more information through our Facebook page. That is enough talking for me now. I want to get into our conversation. I am really excited to have this conversation. We have a spectacular guest with us this evening. She is the award-winning founder of Shakespeare in Detroit, and I cannot wait to talk to her. So let's give a warm We Are Listening welcome to Sam White. Sam, go ahead and come on camera and join me. How you doing, Sam?
I'm good. Hey, Ahmed. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're glad to have you here on We Are Listening, and just to learn more about you, learn about what's going on with Shakespeare in Detroit, and just get your thoughts on the industry. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to talk. I'm excited.
Well, as I always say, you know, the host can always give an introduction, but I really like the people to hear from our guests themselves. So why don't you go ahead and tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you give us a little brief synopsis of how you got into this performing arts world to the point to where we are today.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Sam White. I'm the founder of Shakespeare in Detroit. We're just as much Detroit as we are Shakespeare. And I was born and raised in Detroit on a street called 7 Mile. That's 1 mile from Eminem's 8 Mile. And that's where my love of theater, my love of the performing arts, and my love of Shakespeare began. In my house, because of my mother, who was a ferocious reader, took me to the theater and encouraged me always to be creative, and introduced me to William Shakespeare. Frankly, it was a punishment because she caught me listening to Salt and Pepper's Push It, and hip hop wasn't allowed in our house when I was little. So that was the punishment, to read the complete works from top to bottom. Fell in love eventually. And all these years later, I'm now the founder of Shakespeare in Detroit. So that's sort of the journey in a Shakespeare nutshell, anyway.
That's right. And for those who give me a little idea about the overall programming at Shakespeare Detroit. I'm pretty much what you do and what you put on stage there and present.
Yeah, Shakespeare in Detroit. I'm still crazy about it. I'm still madly in love with Shakespeare in Detroit. It's a site-specific theater company. So that means that we perform in the places people live, work, and play. Our very first show in Detroit was only 4 weeks after the city filed for bankruptcy, which was the first time that a large municipality in the United States, anyway, had filed for bankruptcy. And so we started our journey there because we understood the necessity for a community to come together with something that was pretty recognizable in pop culture, and that thing was Shakespeare. So we perform every summer free performances to the community. And we also have our ticketed performances during the regular sort of season, which is for us September through May. And then what we're working on still now, even during COVID and quarantine, has been our engagement with students from K through 12. We have a program called Shakespeare STEAM, which introduces the science of lighting a production, the technology of sound design, the engineering of a form, which for us is usually a costume, the art of classical performance, and the mathematics of building a set for, again, students in K through 12. And this summer, we're actually working on a conservatory because we're going to invite them back in person again for live lessons and film Romeo and Juliet this summer. So the students, they build their own sets, they help build their own costumes, and they perform in the plays. And then we showcase them to their friends and family. And that's, again, through our program called Shakespeare STEAM. So I'm really proud of Shakespeare in Detroit. It's this ever evolving artistic sort of hub, which Shakespeare is sort of just the vehicle in which we do the work, but the engine is the community, the people who are here in Detroit. So it's still exciting. All these years later, we'll be celebrating 10 years in 2022. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
I want to. That's right. I want to go back to something you just said about the students, because, that's been one of the ongoing themes, here on We Are Listening is, one of the things that we're always talking about is the pipeline as far as getting young people into theater and, trying to find more ways to get young people in the theater, especially people who are somewhat, they're disadvantaged. They don't necessarily have the time or the resources to commit to an internship. Like if they're going to use the time, they need to be compensated in some way, whether, but talk to me a little bit about what was the inspiration and what was the energy behind getting these youngsters into these classes and that's my point, is to learn all these different technical aspects of theater and performing arts.
Yeah, well, personally, I think because I was introduced to theater at such a young age, I personally understand how it connects easily with someone whose imagination is sort of running wild, as a primary school student. And I also, being from Detroit, which depending on the year, sometimes we're the poorest city in the country, sometimes we're not. Depends on what kind of year we I don't know how we did last year, but it ebbs and it flows. Detroit Public Schools had cut a lot of the arts programming in Detroit Public Schools. And so I thought that was sort of one of the worst things that could ever happen to students in the city. And so in 2019, we decided to continue to do our professional work, but really lean into the work of Shakespeare STEAM with our students, because that's where it begins. That's where you plant those seeds. That's where the love of theater sort of comes through. And we also understood, because we're embedded with the students during the regular school year, actually in their classrooms with their teachers and with their principals. And then in the summers when we do our conservatory work, but we understood, because of our relationship with the teachers and with the principals, because we're embedded, that every student doesn't want to go up on stage and recite a monologue. Like, that's just not their thing. And speaking of, we talk about economic sort of disparities, but there's also social disparities in some inner cities like Detroit, where students just haven't been exposed or haven't had certain literacy competencies available to them just because they haven't, and so, but they might be fantastic designers. They might know how to sketch like it's nobody's business. They might understand how to light something and illuminate it and make it beautiful. They might be really good with like stitching and sewing. They might be really awesome at like hammering a nail. And so, because every student, we understand, is not, necessarily trying to be the next Denzel Washington, we wanted to create other opportunities for them to design, for them to render, and for them to be their best possible selves without the pressure of being under the lights. Maybe they don't want to be under the lights. Maybe they want to create the lighting. And so what we found at Shakespeare in Detroit is that having more robust educational programming that's not just focused on acting, because again, every kid is not trying to be up on stage like that, has really helped us engage with more students, because we found that there's a lot of beautiful artists in Detroit Public Schools who, like, they're sketching all these like cartoons and these different things and shapes. And then when you tell them, hey, you can be in theater class without saying to be or not to be. And they're like, oh, really? Word, I can do that. And it's like, yeah, you can, by being a designer. So some of it is just exposure. Some of it is just telling them what's available to them. And that's what's the most exciting thing about Shakespeare in Detroit, Shakespeare STEAM, is that it's not just one thing. It's not just the acting. It's all 5 pillars. It's the S, the T, the E, the A, and the M. And when you do that and you make all these different avenues available to these kids, I found that you're able to really inspire more people. And that's the point. And we need more Black designers anyway. I mean, by the way, we need more Black kids getting inspired to light some things and to design some things, and again, render some things so that they can make, magic behind the scenes, because that's just as valuable as the work that we see on stage. It's just, again, nobody is talking to, I found, kids about the other opportunities besides, learning how to recite a beautiful monologue or verse and prose. There's other options available, because theater is everything. It's not just acting.
Right. And that's why I was so glad to hear you say that, because that's one of the things I always harp on, is that, primarily as everybody in the audience knows, primarily my time in theater has been it's been in the administrative side, but it's been on the ticketing side, it's been on the tech side, now it's on the development side. But all those skills have built upon one another. You know, I just recently started doing some acting, but I'm way more comfortable behind the keyboard and doing all the behind the scenes stuff. But that's what I've been trying to tell people, is that there are so many other avenues in the performing arts for creativity. It's not all on stage. There's carpenters, electricians, like you said, there's designers. And what are some of the reactions? Do you get kids who are thinking like, you know, maybe if it wasn't for your program, like nobody else would have saw that talent or had been able to put them in a role to where they could see that they could use that talent to do something else?
I'm going to say this with all humility, but yes. And I think part of it too is because, and I mean this with all due respect to the other arts organizations in Michigan and in Detroit, with all due, I think it's different when you're embedded, like we're with the kids in their classroom, and B, I look like them, you know, like they literally will ask me, like, Miss Sam, what high school did you go to? Oh, my mama went to that school, you know, so they
right.
having that affinity with these kids is much different than, say, a lot of the predominantly white organizations that go into the schools and make programming available. But there's something about you being someone, or me being somebody who looks like them and saying, hey, you can do this, 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 and this. And they're a little bit more open to it. I think that has been a really huge factor in the success that we've seen with the 700 kids that we've been able to work with, is that they have that affinity. And in addition to that, I think it's also the way that we communicate with them. Like, I understand that, you know, they might hate Shakespeare and I love teachers. My cousin is a teacher. I love teachers, but Shakespeare is often taught in English class wrong. And so that also could have sort of intimidated them and made them sort of turn off to Shakespeare or to theater itself. And I found when you sort of break it down to them that, hey, you know, verse is hip hop and meter and couplets and all that is something that you're already speaking when you're reciting like Travis Scott or something. It's the approach. And it's also, once you're able to sort of break down some of those social barriers that they have, having those 5 pillars available for the students, especially some of my middle school kids who just will not put on tights, but they will, render a balcony for me. You know what I'm saying? So it's great to be able to offer a lot of options for a lot of kids.
And that's another thing that we kind of harp on, that is so important, that we try to get people to understand, is that, you know, like you said, it just is what it is. Like I said, we talk candidly here. We keep it real. Like we try to get people to understand that, you know, I give this metaphor because it's the best one I have. When I was a kid, I looked forward to watching Soul Train on Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock, because I knew for at least an hour, the commercials, I was going to see people who look like me doing the stuff that I did. I was going to see Black people going to the store. I was going to see Black people, not just one here, I was going to see Black people in mass doing what we do, and how important it is that young people see people who look like themselves doing things that they typically don't think they can do. If they see someone who looks like them or comes from a similar situation like them, then they're more apt to think like, oh, I can do that too. There's space for me there. I have a right to be in that space. I have the power to be in that space and develop. And that's why I think that's really, really special what you guys are doing. And I know a lot of performing arts theaters do education, but I think I hope those who are not put the resources to do it. And I hope those that are doing it make sure that they kind of take this time to maybe revamp, to make sure they're encompassing, you know, what everybody in their community looks like, and making sure they're reaching out to everybody, let them know that, hey, everybody is welcome in this space. Everybody can make it, you know, in this space. I want to talk to you. Oh yeah, go ahead. You know,
and I was just going to say that even, you know, we're still in the middle of COVID, but for the next year or two, I really, and we were just talking, me and some of the other folks at Shakespeare in Detroit, about continuing to lean into the educational piece of the work that we do, because frankly, you know, while all of us adults are excited and ready to get back to work in person with audiences and all of that, the future of theater is actually dependent upon the students that are sitting in desks from K through 12. It's not really us. You know, we're already in it in present day doing the work, and we're excited to get back. But if this thing is really going to sustain itself, and we're going to see more Black directors, more Black producers, more Black designers, more Black craftspeople, then it really starts with kindergartners, first graders, second graders, you know, middle school. And so we have to invest more time and money into those babies, because that's where it's at, if we are in fact going to really make impact over the next 20 years. Because I'm old news at this point. You know, for me, it's really about the babies that are coming up now. So I'm excited to continue to do our work, and really lean into that STEAM work over the next 2 years. Yeah.
Right. And that's important right now too. You know, like we always say, especially in this time we've had where so many organizations are making these statements and these, you know, these pronouncements of what they're going to do moving into the future. You know, and I think, you know, that's the number one, you know, to have self-accountability in that for each organization to do that. But then also, you know, I think organizations who have not engaged in that work or have not typically known what that has looked like, I think they're going to realize how big of a change that is, and maybe hopefully realize when they're looking in these meetings and they start realizing what that encompasses. You know, I hope there's a real soul searching to understand, you know, what that means. I mean, I've you know, been doing a lot of study on, you know, back in the 40s and of, you know, the Office of Un-American, what is it? The Office of Un-American Activities, when basically supporting Black theater or any type of theater was, you know, made to fall under communism. And so therefore suppressed Black writers, Black plays, Black artists were just suppressed from the federal programming when it came to theater. And I want people to understand, you know, what that's done to generations of artists, you know, not just Black artists, but just suppressing that whole canon of creativity, you know, for people to look up to, Black, white, whatever, you know, to see their neighbors as fellow artists. So I'm really, really glad to hear that y'all are doing that work. Like, my hat's off to you in engaging in that. That's really, that's more special than people realize it is. It's really special.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we don't talk about educational work enough. And for the people who only speak dollars, you know, because there's some people out there who only speak in dollars and cents, like, it just makes sense as far as money is concerned, because if people don't understand, then they need to check for the Black dollar, right? The reason why the fashion industry booms is because of Black people. The reason why certain movies make it to the top of the box office is because of the Black dollar. So if you invest in children and you get them interested in theater, even if they don't join our industry and they become engineers, doctors, or whatever else they might become, they're going to buy theater tickets if you whet their appetite in K through 12. So if people aren't interested in the social aspects of it, even though they should be,
right?
Just as far as commerce is concerned, because there are people out there who only speak in dollars, and it just makes sense to engage with the Black community, and also for us as, you know, Black people to recognize how powerful our dollar is. You know, a lot of these big, huge companies, like I said, like the fashion industry, Gucci, and all these other people, the reason why they boom is because of us. You know, and music and all of that, and so I think it starts by really dedicating time, resources, and love to our Black kids in K through 12, because they're going to grow up and be extremely powerful people. And let's invite them to the theater by going into their classrooms and telling them about all these beautiful plays, not just Shakespeare, because, by the way, I like more than just Shakespeare, but other plays and other playwrights too. Yeah, and other things that they can do and learn in the theater. Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about a little bit about where we've been over the last summer and, you know, where we're going, because this is, you know, and I know for us in California, and I know things are different state to state, but, you know, I know all across the country, especially for the performing arts, because it seems like we're last on everybody's list when it comes to getting the ball back rolling. What have been your thoughts over the last summer? Because and they're kind of inseparable, right? The COVID pandemic And of course, what we're watching now, like I said, the trial of George Floyd is on not the trial of George Floyd. The trial of the officer who murdered George Floyd is all over the news. It's on TV. It's currently happening. We know that was a big part of the racial reckoning from last year that has affected performing arts, theaters, and everything. Give me a little bit of your thoughts about what you and your organization have been, going through over the last year, and your thoughts of where, how you see things shaking out as we look at maybe, on a grand scale of, performing arts, maybe getting back on a whole to doing live performances towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I live in two different like worlds. I live in Detroit and then I live in the regional theater space. Because in many ways, Detroit, I feel, is sort of siloed from the larger American theater. It's sort of like this really industrial town that's still very much all about cars. But one of the things that I love about Detroit, and one of the reasons why I've stayed here, is because Blackness has always been at the top of our conversations, because we 84% Black up in Detroit. Everybody's Black.
Right.
I mean, that's just what it is. We got our first white mayor about 7 years ago, and it was controversial. We were like, what in the... So, it's much different than the rest of the world that isn't as Black. But I feel for our organization and sort of what's happened, especially since the unfortunate loss of George Floyd, and not just George Floyd, but Black men around the country, maybe whose names we don't know. But George Floyd bringing it to the forefront is, I think that there's sort of more attention from foundations and from people who help support our work to do better for us and by us. Conversations that usually wouldn't get a return email, that wouldn't get a return phone call, that wouldn't get any sort of acknowledgement. Now there is some acknowledgement, and I'm not sure how long it's gonna last, Ahmed. Because while the city is 84% Black, the people who write checks here are not. So I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but I'm going to keep it real honest. I'm happy to accept any donations from people who help me continue to, keep our kids engaged with theater. At the same time, I'm giving people the side eye because, because the reason Shakespeare in Detroit exists is because, frankly, I was tired of seeing no Black directors and no Black producers in the Blackest city in the country besides Baltimore, right? And we've been doing the same type of work, putting Black people in costumes, reciting beautiful Shakespeare on stage for the past almost decade. So to just get the attention after George Floyd passed away, to me I'm hopeful, but I'm also hesitant. And I think that I'll have to have another discussion with you in 2 years, Ahmed, to see if those people who have been so supportive and aware and leaning into these conversations with Black leaders like myself and other Black leaders in the city, if they're still engaging. It's TBD still. It's TBD, and then what's happening around the rest of the country. There's been some beautiful, which you sort of pointed to, some beautiful manifestos and promises that have been made from very large PWIs, or predominantly white institutions around the country and in the region. And again, I'm excited, I'm hopeful, but I'm also giving people the side eye because I really want to see what happens when the pandemic has sort of lifted a bit more, and when we get back into theaters with live audiences, because I still do not see a ton of Black directors specifically and Black people behind the scenes. I think there had started to be a bit more Black people on stage, but it's sort of like a Band-Aid for a lot of the sort of white supremacist actions that have been happening behind the scenes. And what happens is, when you employ us to do the work, to direct, to help produce, to do the designs, those conversations that you're having, they'll happen innately. The work will happen innately because we understand how to not be racist when we put people in certain costumes, because we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that to ourselves. You understand? So I don't know. I mean, I'm hopeful, but I'm still not sure, because it's easy to say all the things you're going to do when you're still stuck in your living room on Zoom, you know? So I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm hopeful, but again, we see white America, or white American theater, you know, and white
Yeah.
America too, frankly, because the theater industry is just a symptom of a larger problem in our country. You know, it's like James Baldwin said, to be African American is to be African with no memory, and to be American with no privilege. It's a hard place to be in this country, and it's not just in theater, it's everywhere. So all those people who said beautiful things, I'm hoping you'll follow up with beautiful actions now and in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. That ends up being a common theme on here, you know, because I asked that question to everybody, and almost every, like, yeah, you know, you're hopeful, but we've seen waves of this before. And the thing I always tell people is like, I know for as me, I'm like, no Black people asked for statements to be made. Like, that's the thing I always say is like, we didn't, like, people rushed out to do that, but we also know that a real part of that is like, yeah, as much as there were good intentions behind that, we do know this is America. We know how this market economy works, and we've seen it. We saw it happen. You know, our my coworkers, Kim Howe, we did a podcast together. We saw what happened after the murders of the Asian women in Atlanta a few weeks ago. We saw the same type of thing. And so we know these things right now happen because they help the bottom line. They help you look like you're on the pulse, and you know you want to retain people. So, you know, we're conscious and wondering, you know, does this continue when Black death is not trending? When it's not, you know, when it's not at the top of the trend list? Is this, you know, do these commitments still, are you still committed to this next March? You know what I mean? Post pandemic, and people are back in the
March
theaters.
after that.
Yeah. Are you still committed to this? Are you still committed to this thing? So no, I totally feel where you're coming from on that. What are your plans, or what are you looking forward to as we do move into hopefully getting back to doing what we do with live audience? Like I know we were talking a little bit before we came on, and I had this conversation with Keith and Jonathan last week, where Keith was just kind of like, I don't want digital to continue nothing. Like, he just wants to get back to doing everything live, you know. And we were kind of like, well, the real deal of the world is that we're moving to like virtual's here. It's not going anywhere, and we're going to have to move into a hybrid space and learn how to deal with that. What are your plans, or what are your thoughts as we move forward into getting people back in front of us live?
Yeah, I appreciate the digital space. I was mentioning that to you. You know, I think we need to have hybrid spaces for theater and for the shows that we create, because frankly, in the spirit of equity, I think if we don't continue, it's quite inequitable. Frankly, there are some people who you could literally tell them, I'll pay your rent for a whole year if you come see this show, and they're not coming.
Right.
They're just not coming, you know. And but if you say, hey, you can download this, you can stream this, you can do this and watch this show, they'll absolutely do it, you know, because they feel comfortable in their house. They feel comfortable with their device. That's just the way that they engage with entertainment. And so I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice as theater people if we don't make our work available online and also in the analog space, analog and digital, you know, because of course we want to get back. We love audiences, and audiences, some of them love us, you know, the ones who come and they want to share space, and we all want to have that same sort of energy in the same space, breathing in the same air, having that classical theatrical experience. But some people don't, especially young people. I got to tell you, there's some younger people who like the digital world is just where they live. And so I'm looking forward to creating more shows for Shakespeare in Detroit that are available both in person and online, because that's another way, again, to engage with young people. And that's, for me, like that's the future. I love what the RSC is doing. We don't have that type of budget to be doing like all this animation and stuff that they do. Right. And some of their, and I'm like, okay, that looks expensive. But I do like that they're like trying really diligently, especially even before the pandemic when they did The Tempest, I think, which was an extremely digital production. I don't know if I would take it as far as replacing actors with digital entities.
Right.
But I like the idea of making work and art available online, and we're going to keep that template forever because that's just what it is.
Yeah. And part of that, you know, I was in a meeting today where I was talking about, you know, we can use, you know, we're one of the industries where we can use ourselves as looking at our patrons. And, you know, we're one of those people, we can look at our habits and look at patrons because we love what we do. We love consuming what it is that we produce. And I was just, you know, we were talking that through this pandemic, how much theater and theater companies I've been exposed to because I've had to virtually search them out. And I'm now like, oh, I'm subscribing to that theater. I like what they do. Oh, I'm subscribing to that theater. I like what they do. I like what they do.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're going to have to, if we're looking for younger audiences, if we're looking for more people, and this is not just for theater, this is a worldwide thing. There, like I said, the NBA, like you were saying, RSC, the NBA was ahead of the curve because they were doing the VR goggles with the game like a season and a half ago. And they saw how like people were like, oh, I can be courtside in my living room. I'm doing that. And that became a whole season subscription package for the NBA. You could buy season VR tickets. And that's going to be the future of everything, you know, we do. So we're going to have to somehow come to a reckoning that the world has changed, and that change has been accelerated by COVID. It was going to happen anyway, but COVID just accelerated it in a whole new light. And, you know, us as theater makers, we're going to have to adopt to that. We're going to have to adopt to that, especially with younger audiences that, you know, we're trying to compete with. We're just going to have to adopt to it. There's no, I don't see any ifs, ands, or buts. So I'm not saying you have to convert to an all digital, but the stuff that you're doing live, you're going to have to offer a digital component for it if you really want to maximize your audience and maximize what you're getting for that show, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting. You know, it's like, what's that quote from King Lear? Edmund is like, it's not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves, right? I think this is the time where we create the destiny of theater. You know, what's the next wave of creating art for the masses? You know, I think it's cool. And I'm excited for it. You know,
Right.
Of course, we want to be back in the theater. That goes without saying. We love our live audiences. I cannot wait to stand at the door and like hug people and thank them for coming,
Right.
you know? I can't wait for that. But at the same time, you know, I want somebody in Africa or in Lisbon or in like Costa Rica or wherever to be able to see the work that Shakespeare in Detroit is doing. You know, we work hard for these plays, and the more people that can engage with what we're doing, the better. I think it's exciting. And, you know, I know change is hard. Very few people like change, but you either sort of accept it or roll with it, because the thing is, the world, like you said, was already going in that direction, and it's getting there even quicker because of our current circumstances. So I'm excited to make all of our work available in digital and analog, because I want as many people as possible to see Shakespeare in Detroit stuff. And I want to control our destiny by making it available on both platforms.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I love hearing that because the thing that stuck in my head lately, it just came to my head one day, is that, you know, if you're alive right now, you're on the spear tip of humanity. You're on the cutting. You just by nature of that, you're on the spear tip of the human race. You know, and even our vaccines are different technology. Everything, we're in a different space. We're just in a different space in everything we do. How we eat, how we grow food, how we consume water, how we can take in entertainment, everything we do. You know, my twins, I'm just like, this is their first year. This is their first year of school, kindergarten, completely online, you know, and I took them to the park for the first time yesterday in like a year. And I'm noticing how much they not lost, but here was before they went to kindergarten a year ago, where these, you know, little 5-year-olds, went to the park, played and everything. They're at the park yesterday. They ain't got time to play. All these kids are sitting on top. They're all sitting on top of the slide talking. Like all these kids, like they've been so starved to be around other kids. They're not even playing, but they're having fun talking, and they're talking about games, and they're talking about their video games. And it was another thing. I was like, wow, like this is just a change, just a change. And we're on the tip of it. And we have to embrace that. We just have to embrace that. We're, on the spearhead of that change in this society at this moment.
Yeah, I agree. It's levels to this. It's levels.
Right.
And it's like you're either gonna sort of, and it's not a bad thing, you
Right.
either make work available to more people or not. I think the former sounds better than the latter. So I'm excited to do it. And again, there are so many people, Ahmed, who I know personally in Detroit who will not come to a theater. The culture of theater has just not, it just for them has not been an inviting space where you have to go in, you can't talk. If you laugh too loud, the person to your right is going to get irritated and get an attitude. You can't bring anything to eat or drink in there. They get hungry if they're sitting there for an hour. So of course I'm going to watch it at home. I'm not coming to a theater if I can't be vocal. Sometimes I want to talk back.
Right.
I want to talk back. I don't want to sit there like this. Like, that's boring. So yeah, there's some people, if the culture hasn't opened its doors for them, then I don't blame them for wanting to stream Romeo and Juliet. I don't blame them for wanting to stream LeBlanc, of course. And so that's the other thing we have to examine. Have our analog shows or in-person shows been welcoming to people who don't want to just sit there in suits and ties and, be all stuffy? That does not sound fun, nor does it sound welcoming to the cool kids, in my opinion. And what I found, the reason why I love site-specific Shakespeare rather than us always doing our shows in theaters is because we go where the people are. We did Antony and Cleopatra in a recycling facility. We made all of our costumes out of stuff we pulled from the recycling bins. We did Henry V in an old house and invited people into the ballroom. Like, we've been able to go where the people are. And when we've sort of taken away those systematic barriers of what the theater has sort of socially brought into people's minds about how they should act, how they should be, when we take those things away, we found that more people who would never come to a play, they show up because we've come to them and said, hey, we at a house, come see a show. Oh, we at the recycling facility, come hang out with us. Oh, we're in the park, or we're in a garden. Oh yeah, we're gonna perform at this weird little alleyway. Can you come? And they say yes, because the culture of theater has not always been welcoming to a lot of people.
Right. Excellent. I'm with it. I'm all with it. I want to talk to you a little bit as we get into the conversation. I want to talk to you a little bit about your San Diego connections here. Especially with your relationship with the Old Globe, who's one of our partners here. We Are Listening. But I was reading that you were a member of the inaugural 2019 cohort for Classical Directing Fellows at the Old Globe. And then you also directed A Midsummer Night's Dream at the Old Globe. Talk to me a little bit about your relationship with the Old Globe and San Diego.
Yeah, those are my peeps. I had the pleasure of being a part of the first cohort of directors at the Old Globe with Delicia, who you mentioned earlier, and L.A. Williams and Danielle, who also directed at the Old Globe a couple years ago, and it was just the four of us with Barry Edelstein,
right,
in a room talking about Shakespeare and talking about theater and about plays and about the industry. This was in 2019, so we were there at the right moment, because who knew that the following year a global pandemic would hit. And so we incubated at the Old Globe, myself and three other directors who I just mentioned, for about a week. And we had a good old time. Me, Danielle, LA, and Delicia. And then in 2020, Jesse Perez, who is the head of the acting department at the University of San Diego's MFA acting program at Shiley, asked me to direct A Midsummer Night's Dream. And Jesse, who's amazing and wonderful, I said, yes, of course, yes. And I had the best time, Ahmed. It was just good. I directed the play in 2020. So some of it I directed on Zoom from here in Detroit. But then I was able to go out to, or come out to San Diego for, it was supposed to be 3 weeks. I had to end my time there a little early because my dad got sick. But we did the play within the play, which is the last sort of moment in A Midsummer Night's Dream, outdoors at the Old Globe. And it was just wonderful. And we did this really sort of fun, weird production where some of it was in black and white, like we were in the 1940s in the middle of a auto factory, because instead of like fairies, we had factory workers, and then everything turned to color when we were in the magical garden. I hope people saw it. It was so much fun to do. I had a good time on that production, and it was just what the doctor ordered for what was happening in my life at that time and what was happening in the world at that time. So I love the Old Globe, and I love the MFA actors. And I love Jesse, who's just a conduit of joy and creativity. Jesse, that's my friend. He's awesome. Yeah.
You can do a lot with Midsummer Night's Dream, can't you?
You can. It's so magical that it brings out the magic in you as a director. You know, it's so like, I'm such a little like kid in my head still, Ahmed, which is probably why I like working with students.
Right.
I just fantasize about plays all the time. And it was really awesome to make Oberon like the head of a factory line and make Titania inspired by Rosie the Riveter. It was just a really great experience. And Midsummer was the perfect play to really use my imagination and use the actors' imaginations. And we had a good time. Yeah, it was really good. I would say this though. I would like to direct in normal circumstances one day. I wish I could bring back those same actors because they were all so wonderful. And I had a lovely time in San Diego. Yeah.
Good. Well, we look forward to you coming back.
Yeah, I hope so. When the world is opened and
right.
Get COVID testing and all that kind of stuff all the time. Yeah, I hope so.
Let me ask you about this, because I've been seeing this pop up more and more, and like I said, we're on the spirit tip, so things come about that are important. And I've just recently part of my career has been getting more into the artistic side. Like I said, most of my time has been on the ticketing, tech side, development side, and now I work with the artistic department here at San Diego Repertory Theatre. So I'm kind of like catching on to that thing, which is all good. It's just another tool I'm putting in the box, but I'm catching up on things. But this is something I've been seeing a lot lately, and I follow you on Twitter, and I saw you saying that the Shakespeare in Detroit was going through intimacy training. And I just wanted to ask you about that. And, for just anybody else who's kind of just now kind of like, wait, I'm reading so much about this and seeing so much about this. Tell us about the importance of this. Tell me about the importance of this for, theater companies, for the actors, and tell me what's so important about this.
Well, I think boundaries are important, and I think it's been really interesting during COVID-19. Everybody's sort of become hyper aware of boundaries, right? 6 feet apart and all of that, social distancing, those sorts of things. But boundaries have always been wonderful to be aware of. And I think Intimacy, or IDC is the organization that gave Shakespeare in Detroit its training, which is Intimacy Directors and Coordinators. So shout out to them. I learned about them when I was a fellow at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. But I knew this year I wanted to take myself through some training along with the folks who work with me at Shakespeare in Detroit, just so that we could be better equipped in language and in strategy when we engage with our students, and also when we welcome back actors for things like, intimate scenes, love scenes, or whatever someone might call it, so that when our actors leave us at Shakespeare in Detroit, when they're done with their contracts, when they're done with their time with us on one particular play, they can leave as whole people, as whole individuals, where they haven't come to Shakespeare in Detroit and been, hopefully, knock on wood, traumatized or hurt or unseen or disregarded, because all of us, not just myself, all of us have gone through training so that we have the opportunity to not only make really cool plays or to make dope things, but to empower and to and again, not hurt, but amplify or empower artists when they come into our space. And so I thought it was hugely important that not just myself, but all of us go through this intimacy training, because we want to be right when we come back, you know, and we want to not be a part of the patriarchy and the things that have hurt so many, specifically BIPOC actors when they step into spaces. And that requires in some situations training. And so I wanted us to do that. Last weekend, we all did it. I had taken some training on my own as well, but it's important if we're really going to be a better theater company when we come back and actually add value to the theater community as a whole here in Detroit and around the country.
It's one of those things to where, you know, I'm always telling people who work outside of theater, you know, I think it's the same that people have an idea about Hollywood because they always see the high-end stuff that's on TV. They don't understand the work and the grind that this industry is. They don't understand the issues that we have to deal with almost more than other people, because we're dealing with so many different sets of people and we're doing things to put things in a place where we're presenting them to the public. And I don't think people understand what it is to like present things to the public about people. And this is one of those things in intimacy training and all these things we're going through that I think I always feel like people just have this idea when they hear theater, they just think Shakespeare in the Park, or they've watched a movie and seen people go to the theater in the movie, and they take that, you know, they have that thing in their mind about what it is to do this work. But to go along with what you were saying about, you know, educating the young people on everything that goes into what we do, you know, it's like you're saying, this is important. I don't know if people just take for granted what happens when they see intimate scenes in theater or in movies. And like, they think it's like, oh, it's just, they're actors. It's just easy to do that. And it's like, no, they people too. People got boundaries. People got fears, got past and trauma that you got to deal with. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, that's why I asked you that, because it just seems that, and I don't know if it's just me, but I feel as though I didn't hear much about that training as much as I've had in the last 6 or 7 months. You know, it just didn't seem like it was in the forefront like that.
And you know, intimacy directors and coordinators, they're artists. They're doing choreography. Like those scenes are choreographed. You know, and it's like you said, I don't think the public at large understand like the nuance and the work and the artistry that's involved with something like a love scene, you know? And so these people are working to keep people safe and to make something really beautiful. So for the people who do that work full time, I think it's great work. And they and all of us who are involved in theater, like you said, it's a grind. It truly is a grind. And for me, I want to be aware of sort of all the ways in which we can do better work at Shakespeare in Detroit, or when I direct for other people, because I have a thing where I always say, Ahmed, I want to tell stories. I don't want to be the story. I don't want to be the story. I don't want people to be like, yeah, I worked with Sam and I was traumatized.
Right.
You know, I mean, now, you know, I'm not perfect by any means. Totally imperfect. That's breaking news, everybody. Imperfect AF, excuse me. But I want to do my best to not be the story. I hope that I do my very best when people come into my rehearsal room or they come and work at Shakespeare in Detroit, where they feel seen and safe. And I want them to walk away as themselves with no added trauma, no added, you know, anything negative, because we as BIPOC people, you know, and I can speak for, you know, for my Black self, have had so many experiences just as a Black woman, just in everyday life, where when I go to the theater, I don't need nothing else hurting me or harming me. So I definitely, as somebody who leads an organization and who's honored to be able to work with other organizations, I just want to do everything that I can to, again, never be the story, but to tell stories.
Right. Tell me as much as you can about your television aspirations.
Yeah. Why do I get so happy? I mean, I mean, currently I have a lot of dreams I'm in, but like I've been writing a TV pilot, and it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And shout out to my friend Amritha, who has been very patient with me in writing this thing. Um, I want to write a TV pilot. I don't want to, I am writing a TV pilot about a young woman from Detroit who started a Shakespeare company in the most unlikely city to have a Shakespeare company, which I feel is Detroit. It's a little bit insecure. If Insecure in his TV show called Slings and Arrows had a Black baby, this would be what this TV pilot is. And I think it's exciting. It's going to require a lot of intimacy coordination because it's a little risky. It's a lot of Shakespeare. It's a lot of theater. And I think it's sort of the best thing that I've created ever. But it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been through this journey with Shakespeare in Detroit, because a lot of the stories in the pilot, and now I'm starting to sort of work on a couple of other episodes that'll follow the pilot, are based on real experiences that I've had. Not all of it, Mama, just in case this thing gets picked up. Mama, in case she's watching. Some of them are fictional, but it's definitely, I think it's sexy, it's funny. I used to be a stand-up comedian, so I have a lot of like jokes that I was holding on to that I put into the TV pilot. And I hope somebody picks it up, because that's the dream. I really want to be able to write for television, because I love the idea of continuing a story every week, as opposed to, in theater, we tell a story and then we walk away from it, and then at the end of the story, I want to be able to cling to something and be able to really develop a character for a long time. So I'm excited for that prospect and what's to come. Yeah.
What challenges or what peculiar things are you seeing in the crossover, as far as, doing what you've been doing for the performing arts for so long, but then preparing or writing a pilot for television, a different medium? What are kind of the things that you've run into as far as challenges, or something that's like, whoa, okay, I gotta get used to this? Or is it smooth sailing?
No, it's not smooth sailing at all. It's at all. It's I have to give it to writers, especially writers who write all the time, who have to write a new story every week. I'm inspired by people like Shonda Rhimes, Issa Rae. Like I'm like, how do y'all do what you do and do it so well? I'm finding, because I'm not a writer, I don't feel, I was a journalist for a long time in another life, but writing for TV is totally different. And I don't consider myself, I'm becoming a creative writer. I'm more of a director. I'm a theater director. So I take other people's stories and I make them come to life, as opposed to me writing the story. And I think the biggest thing, Ahmed, that's been scary is being really honest about some of the stuff that has happened to me that I'm using as inspiration for the main character. But also the industry is really, I feel like it's a little bit more open, might I say, than theater. I feel like theater in some ways, I don't know if I should say this, Ahmed, I don't know if I should say this. I feel like it's sort of like a popularity contest in some ways in the theater. It's a big industry, but in some ways it's smaller than TV. And I feel like in TV right now, they're so hungry for Black content. There's so many streaming services. There's so many opportunities, especially for Black writers right now, that I just feel like I'm just not writing quick enough, as opposed to theater, where I've been doing this for almost a decade now, but I still feel like a baby in many ways in the theater. And I still feel like enough people don't know me, or they don't know my work, as opposed to TV. If this pilot lands, thousands of people could see it, and that's a game changer, as opposed to me sort of just going up one rung at a time with theater, and it being much slower, and me being me still having a long way to go as far as people knowing my name and my work. Yeah, I just feel like the world is my oyster when it comes to what I could do with this pilot. Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference.
What do you feel like is, because I see it, I just want to get, from you, what do you think the impact has been for women like Issa Rae and Shonda Rhimes, just on for Black women seeing like, oh, okay, I can move. I can really move into this space. Like I can move into this space and create this story from my perspective because, yeah, people want to hear it. People want to see it. What is their impact?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm getting a little like verklempt. I think with theater for me, it's always been about telling other people's stories. You know, mostly Shakespeare with me, and occasionally when I direct other things, it's been me telling other folks stories and hoping that somebody gives me a break, you know, where I can direct something. With this TV pilot and with the prospect of being a TV writer and hopefully a runner as well, because I like to be a runner, it's my story. This pilot that I'm writing is about me. It's inspired by me. It's inspired by this Black woman from Detroit, from 7 Mile, whose mother threw a book at her because she got mad at her for listening to Salt and Pepper, and it changed her life. It changed her life completely. Everybody, not everybody, but I would say about 80% of the people that I grew up with got pregnant at 15 or 16 years old. Not me, because my mama had me in a room reading books or she had me at the theater. It completely changed my life. So I will always love theater and it'll always be my first love. But now the idea of putting this story on paper and sharing it with somebody, you know, via a television show means a larger audience, a wider reach for that kid who's stuck in their room feeling like there's no weirdo, you know, somewhere in an inner city reading classical, you know, text. Right. I was that weirdo, you know, that was me. Right. And the idea that I get to share that with a big audience is just mind blowing. And Issa Rae and Shonda Rhimes, I think, showed me and a lot of other Black women that our stories really do matter. Like people actually want to hear what we have to say, and they actually laugh at our jokes, and they actually think that we're like, it's not all, I mean, you know, in much respect to all the Black women on television before, but like Shonda and Issa make us glamorous and make us nuanced and complicated and interesting and intelligent. And so it's just, I think having them on TV and seeing what they've been able to do with their writing and with their careers has made me dream bigger, you know, which is why when we were talking about the digital and analog opportunities with theater, I'm like, I want my art to be seen by everybody. And that's also sort of inspired by the work of Shonda Rhimes and Issa Rae, because I don't want to be a secret in a theater. You know, I want as many people to know my story as possible. And I hope TV is that outlet for sure.
That's right. That's right. That's what I'm talking about. And, you know, again, like you were saying about, it's like you said, it's accessibility, right? Because, you know, like you said, you feel like in theater, you're always telling somebody else's stories, but it always seems like there's somehow, no matter what we do, it seems like there's some lever you have to pull, or there's some approval somewhere. There's something that's always just this final like ledge you got to get over, right? Like there's things that come down, and then, you know, a lot of that is history. A lot of that is, you know, just goes back to almost like everything else in this country. It does go back to legislation. It goes back to, you know, the American Theater Act, and when things were put on certain levels and certain networks were put up to approve what scripts and plays went out and got distributed. And we still somewhat, like, people might not think so, but we still somewhat have that system now where there are certain people who have hold to what plays go out where you can access them, or who has, you know, we still have that. And so I'm really glad to hear you say that and to talk about that accessibility, which goes back to what you were just saying about the analog versus the digital. It's all about access. You know, how many more people are going to be exposed to theater because, you know what, the digital price point is going to be better for them than the live price point. People who can afford the live price point are going to go. Right. But if you're really looking to get a new audience, especially in a world where there are so many options for people sitting at home, they can watch a full-length feature now with what the movie theater companies are doing. They can watch full-length feature when it drops today. They can go to the theater or they can watch it at home. probably more people are going to watch it at home now. You know what I mean? And so it's the same with theater. We're going to have to get into that space. But then again, that opens it up for more creativity, and it opens it up for more vantage points, more viewpoints, that allows more stories, you know, to be told.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in the theater, we have a lot of work to do. Like, we have a lot of people to court, you know, and I think making our work available online is going to give us the opportunity to court a lot of people until they're ready for a first date in person at the theater. You know, and so if we want to welcome audiences, so the theater audiences become more interesting and inclusive, then we need to start courting them with digital content, and then hopefully eventually they'll get curious enough, maybe even to come to a live performance. But we got to be available in both spaces.
That's right. That's right. I've been looking at your I was looking at your Shakespeare in Detroit's YouTube page, and I've seen you doing like a lot of, I like the components that you guys have, and I've seen you've been doing a lot of talking about, you know, podcasting and whether people should podcast, and I've seen the different type of videos that you're gonna, how much is that important to, like we were talking about that today too, about now that we are in this age, you know, like you say, you're doing the education, but how important that is that to you to personally speak to the audience, to provide that sense of community for your patrons, to make them feel like, hey, not only are you a patron, but you're a part of what we do. You're a part of this. You're a part of this process. How important is that to you?
I think it's huge. I think I had forgotten how huge it was, because when we first started Shakespeare in Detroit, I used to be on YouTube all the time talking to people directly. And we only had about 50 people following us at the time, but those 50 people gave about $7,500 towards our second show. So it wasn't just 50, you know, random people. It's different if you have a following of 1 million people, but nobody's engaged in what you're doing, then it doesn't matter. But if you have like 5 people who are really into what you're doing and want to support, that makes a difference. So when we first started, we had about 50 people who they were in it with us, like helping us fundraise, helping us spread the word about who we are. And I had totally forgotten, because I got so busy in the last probably 6 or 7 years where I stopped talking directly. And I recently got back to it during quarantine, because I recognize that people don't give to things or organizations, they give to people. They want to know, who is the person that's running this? What are their values? What are they trying to do? What do they stand for? What are their goals? And how are they creating impact for the community? And so I can't be, you know, the phantom of Shakespeare. I have to, even though I'm an aspiring recluse in some ways, but I have to make myself and the rest of the team available through our tutorials and all that kind of stuff that we do online, because people want to know who's behind Shakespeare in Detroit, so that they can connect with us, because they don't connect to a YouTube page, they connect to the people on YouTube. Even with our plays, like I was talking about, standing at the door when people leave, people will wait, like, where's Sam? Like, if I'm missing during some of the shows, where's Sam? I wanted to tell her that my like son got an A on his Macbeth quiz or whatever. So having that personal connection is huge to not only building an audience, but sustaining them for the long run, and also helping them connect in a way that's going to have them around for 20 years and not just for one, like, you know.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, it's important.
Well, Sam, before I let you go, I want you to tell everybody what's in your plans immediately next for Shakespeare in Detroit. What should they be looking out for? I threw the link for Shakespeare in Detroit. Like I said, I love this. The one thing that I said that is that has come from COVID is that this is helping our community be able to reach out to each other and discover each other in a quicker and faster way than probably would have happened if the year had continued like it was. Even though, you know, it's so cliche, but you got to make the lemonade out of the lemons, right? You got to extract whatever positive you can out of any situation. What's next? What you want folks to be on the lookout for?
So check out our website, check out our Facebook at Shakespeare in Detroit, our Instagram at Shakespeare in Detroit, our Twitter at Shakes in the D, and our website at shakespeareindetroit.com, because we're going to be talking more and more about our program, Shakespeare STEAM, which is for students in K through 12. By the way, something that I didn't mention before, the students who participate in our summer conservatory, they all get $1,000 grants, because we understand that these are students who would otherwise be working during the summer. and they're helping and supporting their families. And so we don't, again, when people come to Shakespeare in Detroit, we want them to leave whole. We want them to walk away better than the way that they showed up, or whole. And so we're really excited to be able to offer those grants to our students. So if you're looking for some inspiration on educational content that you can create at your organization around the country, or you want to learn more about Shakespeare STEAM, check us out online, or you can also email us at info@shakespeareindetroit.com. And we're very generous with our Shakespeare STEAM curriculum and ideas. And we want to spread the love for not only vocational and artistic training, but just getting students to reacclimate into socializing again, because frankly, they haven't been together in a long while. So we also have some wellness content available for folks if they want some inspiration on what they could do at their own theater companies or in their classrooms. Check out Shakespeare in Detroit.
I love it. That's what theater should be, right? It should be holistic. That's what art is. It requires all of our senses. So if we want to continue, we got to be able to take care of everybody, and especially take care of the next generation. I got a question that has popped up to me from Facebook. Vaughn Rainwater, who works here at the theater, says, what are the challenges, financial and otherwise, that you faced implementing this program? How were you able to meet those challenges?
Well, the challenges are that we recognize that a lot of the students, especially the high school students, help pay the bills for their families. So in addition to paying for the supplies that we need, which are like lighting kits, stitching kits, sewing kits, in other words, and other things, we also have to make room and space to fundraise for paying grants or giving our students grants. And so oftentimes when we have presented that to sponsors or potential donors, they don't necessarily understand that component, paying the students. And so it's been very challenging having to explain that these are students who, many of them, all of them, probably about 98% of our high school students are coming from homes that, especially over the last 18 months, have had trouble paying their bills and making ends meet, and would maybe working at McDonald's or Wendy's or somewhere else to help pay the light bill. And so we have to be able to present those grants to them. And it's still a challenge getting that additional, which is usually an additional $20,000 to $25,000 for the programming. So it's really it's really educating our sponsors and how the educational sort of impact of our students is directly related to whether or not they can afford to be in the program, right. Because their families, and they're often single parent families, are depending on them to work in the summer.
Isn't that interesting how that subject seems to be such a basic thing to understand, but for some reason it's not, right? That there are young people that need to pay bills, that there are young people who help take care of their families, like that there are young people like, I wasn't even old enough to work. I remember my first job was here in San Diego, the Mary Mesa Mall. I worked at the Mandarin Garden Chinese cuisine. I was 15 years old, and I was clean. I have scars on my forearms still. My job was to take woks right off the fire and scrub them and clean them and get them back on the line for people to, for the cooks to cook back on them again. That was my primary job when it was dinner time. The rest of the time was prep cooking, like cutting onions and prepping food and everything. I was 15, and I just think, me and Freedom talked about that neither one of us would be in this industry if we couldn't get paid to be here. We wouldn't have had the time. We had to work,
That's it. And also not creating a scarcity model for youth, right? Where we traumatize them from taking them away from economic opportunities, where they think that theater is something that depletes them. Theater is something that is economically harmful. Theater is something that's an or, not an and for their life, right? And they also understand that it's a career when they're paid these grants, that we don't just give them money, they earn these grants. I have them stitching, every student is gonna stitch 20 hymns, you better believe it. They're gonna paint the balcony. Miss Sam has these students working, okay? And they understand understand that there's also an opportunity when they finish high school, when they finish college, to make a living and come contribute to this art form because they've earned these grants as students, a part of our Shakespeare STEAM program. So we don't want to teach students a scarce or give them a scarcity model when it comes to theater, right? That would be doing a disservice to students who are often not included in the theatrical conversation. So we're excited for that to be a part of our model.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Sam, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Like, this was a spectacular conversation. I want us to stay in touch, and I really do want to get a little more in depth with what you guys are doing there with education, because this is one of my, you do what you can do, right? You work in your wheelhouse with what you can do to make things better, and you learn more. And that is my wheelhouse, is how do we get more young. I did my first real play, like with Coronado Playhouse, that's streaming right now. And me and the family watched the other day, and you know, my son knows I used to do radio. He used to go with me to the studio. The twins, they used to go when I was doing radio, but he had no idea that I was doing this. Like, even when he would watch me like doing the Zoom rehearsals, he was like, he's used to me being on Zoom, like on Zoom meetings, but he was like, why does daddy keep saying the same words over and over again into the computer screen? Because he was watching me rehearse, but he had no idea I was in the play. And so we were watching it, and he came out and like, he saw me come on stage on this play, and he was like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden, you know, because he's a little tech boy, he's a little gamer. All he cares about is his games. He takes after his dad. He's a little techie. But then he was like, I want to be in a play. I want to be in a play. How do I get in a play? You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, and it's just what you're saying is making this accessible to younger people, educating them. And because that boy's going to know the ins and outs of the whole industry. Oh, you want to be on stage, huh? Well, here's blah, 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 blah. Like, that's coming. Like, he might as well get ready for that. But I really want to touch base with you on that and get, you know, kind of get more in depth with you about the type of programs you're implementing, how that went about, because that's what I'm really trying to bring about, especially here in San Diego, to have more theaters and more theater companies engage in that. Sam, thank you so much. Everybody, make sure you visit www.shakespeareindetroit.com. Check out what they are doing. Sam, I want to have you back on here, check up on what you're doing a little bit later on in the year. But thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. I had a really good time. Thank you.
For sure, for sure. Everybody, have a good night, and make sure you come back and join us next week. We will be talking to choreographer Jeremy McQueen. My name is Ahmed Dents, development and artistic associate here at San Diego Repertory Theatre. On behalf of Jacole Kitchen and Freedom Bradley Ballantyne, the curation team for We Are Listening, and a big shout out as always to Sharisa and AJ for making sure that the train stayed on the track. Thank all of you for joining us, and I will talk to you in a couple weeks. Have a good one. Enjoy your weekend.